There you go. All right. All right. So real quick, Michelle, just as a quick verification, I'm going to go to the next slide so you can, and make sure you can see the next slide and hear my voice. Yes?
You are all good. Looking good.
Beautiful. Okay. So good morning. Good happy Friday morning. There's nothing like a webinar on a Friday morning because I know the weekend is coming, and it's a long weekend at that. And thank you all for spending part of your 4-day weekend with me. We're going to be talking about government prospecting. For those of you who don't know who I am, have never heard me speak, haven't read a book, one of my books, my name is Joshua Frank. Go by Josh. I am the managing partner for RSM Federal. We're a partner with HubZone and with Michelle. And I'm a speaker, author, coach, again, 30 years. I'm a former Intel guy. I know it's an oxymoron, but I was an intelligence officer for a little over a decade. And then I jumped out of a plane and messed up my back. Go figure. Huge small business advocate, chairman of the board for the VBRC. I work with the SBA as a speaker every now and then, and I judge entrepreneurial competitions, the kind where you get like $50,000 if you win. So anyway, my specialty are tactics and strategies, and I'm going to walk through exactly what I mean by that. Let's go ahead and move on. So before we get started, let's set the table here, set the stage. Gsa Schedules. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's just a contract vehicle. It's not the most, it's probably the most common based on number because over 15,000 companies have it. But when you think of contract vehicles, everybody thinks Gsa Schedule. It's most recognized. However, half of companies that have a Gsa Schedule fail. Okay. So, so much for that low hanging fruit. And those of you who, have registered in the System for Award Management and SAM, you will find that as soon as you register, right. And unless you make your profile private, which I think is not a good idea, and it defeats the purpose of being able to create a good, strong programmatic teaming strategy. As soon as you register, you get hammered with marketing emails from companies that want to sell you stuff. And so, when I present, when I give seminars, I go down the rabbit hole a lot. Okay. So I'm going to, as we're talking through various things, it may not be on the slide, but I'm going to throw some things out that I think are really important. Excuse me. The first one is on this slide, Gsa Schedules. I don't recommend any company get a Gsa Schedule until they've been in the market at least a year. Okay. Why? Because if you don't understand business development, right? If you don't understand business development in the public sector within the federal space, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the schedule. Just getting that contract vehicle, that means $0. You still have to position the vehicle. So half of companies fail. Now, I'm only bringing up this example of a Gsa Schedule because it's a microcosm of the overall market. As an example, 50% of the 8As, the minority socially disadvantaged companies, fail to win contracts. 50% of HubZone fail to win contracts. 50% of woman-owned, veteran-owned, service-disabled. 50% of Gsa Schedule holders fail to win contracts. So to get on a schedule, you've got to have solid products or services. There's an exception on technology, but you have to be able to prove to the government that you've sold in the past, or for the most part. And so 50% are not failing because of their products or services. They have solid products. They have solid services. So why do 50% fail? Now, before I answer that question, let me give you another example. Two identical companies. So I want you to think for a moment, no matter what it is you sell, there's a company identical to you. The owners have the same education levels. Both companies get help from the same coaches or consultants or small business specialists. You both go to the same events. You watch the same webinars, same books. Everything is identical. But one company wins $3.5 million in government contracts, and the other company doesn't make a penny. Somebody explain that to me. How is that possible? Both companies, both highly educated or not, both go to the same training events. So why do 50% of GSA schedule holders fail to win contracts? And how can two companies literally have the exact same information, same education, everything? One makes millions, the other does not. The reason why, and this is the cornerstone of what I do for a living, it's not about what you learn. Okay? If it were that simple, everybody'd be winning contracts. It's all about how you apply it, which means the application, the tactics, and the strategies. Okay? And this is crazy, crazy, crazy important for prospecting and sales. So one final thing here before we get into our agenda today. Why do companies win contracts? So everybody that's listening in today, imagine I can hear you say out loud, why does a company win a contract? Okay. Now, when I'm in front of a group at a conference, this is normally what I hear. Okay. Hey, it's our past performance, right? We got great past performance. Our management team, well, there's absolutely something to it. You know, our value, the value we provide, you know, our quality, you know, maybe we have a really strong quality control or quality assurance process, or our back office. You can read the rest of them, right? Pricing. But I always say to them, but what's the number one reason? What is the one reason above all else that you're going to win contracts? And the answer is it's your value. Okay. Now I'm going to talk on this briefly today as well. I'll also talk about some other resources to help you figure out, you know, how to communicate your value. But if you're not communicating your value, you're toast. Okay. In this respect, it's fairly market agnostic. It doesn't matter whether you're selling commercial, residential, state, local, education, federal. If you're not communicating your value, we've got some issues. And I'll get more into that here in just a minute. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. All of that was just to set the stage. This is going to be basic to intermediate content, about an hour and a half. I hope to get through this in a little over an hour so we can have a lot of Q&A, a lot of information. We're going to move really fast. Agenda, we're going to talk about the budget and why we're talking about the budget. We're going to talk about, this is a foot stomp, acquisition versus pre-acquisition, okay? And I'm going to be explaining to you why pre-acquisition is where you need to be spending most of your time from a sales perspective. How do you differentiate, right? And I'll be talking about how being HubZone certified is not one of your primary differentiators, and we'll talk about that. And for those of you that are already curious, it's a balancing differentiator, but we'll get more into that in a minute. We're going to talk about who buys what you sell. How much do they buy? How often do they buy it? Where do you go for that stuff? And what should you be looking for when you go into those systems? We're going to go into the 20 most common prospecting methods that all of us have been told since the beginning of time. You got to do this. You got to go into SAM. You got to go to this event. You got to have a bid matching system. We'll talk through those 20, and I'm going to walk through which ones actually work, right? And then I threw this in because I talked to another group well, is there anything special that I can be doing in Q4? Because we're in the final month of Q4. Is there anything special I can be doing to win some contracts, right? My answer to that will not surprise you, but it should make some sense. And then we'll do some Q&A. Now, for those of you, because I know it's a Friday morning, that may have to leave early, you can download the slides, the templates, other resources at federal-access.com/hubzone. Federal Access is a microsite for RSM Federal, for my company. The slides are not up there yet, so you can write it down. Later today, everything will be posted. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. As Michelle said, we're going to hold questions to the end. Federal budget. We're in 2021 right now, right? So, there's about $4.5 trillion that's out there. And in terms of appropriations for the Department of Defense and the federal agencies, we're looking at 1.5, right? So for those of you, I think we all knew that the entitlement programs, I call them entitlement programs, the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, are more than everything else. But if you didn't realize it, it is twice as much as DOD and federal agencies. And in fact, DOD is more than all the agencies combined. At a high level, you want to understand that if we're selling to the government, right? Now, just because I have the DOD, the total appropriations separated from the mandatory programs, right? Not entitlement programs. I call them that, but let's call them mandatory programs. There is billions and billions of dollars that you have access to in those mandatory programs as well, right? Center for Medicare, Medicaid Services, HHS, Health and Human Services, all of them have contractors, right? So if you look at the bottom and you go, okay, how much is available to us? How much is available to small businesses? From a statutory perspective, just looking at DOD and federal, $341 billion. Okay, that's what's available. Doesn't guarantee they're going to spend it, but that's what's available. That 42 billion doesn't even count what's available in the mandatory programs. So why do I bring this up, right? So what? They're big numbers. Do we really care? Your top priority as a business developer, in terms of building your corporate business development or capture strategy for this market, is to properly engage. Now, we're going to talk about these pieces, but don't listen to colleagues that are constantly complaining about not winning, okay? They clearly don't understand how to position in the market. If you ever hear about budget cuts or sequestration, yeah, they're a big deal. But to the uneducated, to those companies that really don't know what they're doing, okay? And now some of you may be, in that uneducated area. I'm going to show you, and again, RSM Federal and what we do. We have an ecosystem, a GovCon ecosystem of resources. Many of them are free, right? And I'll show you all those. But don't worry about cuts and everything else. There is so much money in this market that as long as you learn how to position and approach, you're going to be fine. Okay, you'll be fine. Again, it's not what you learn, it's how you apply it, right? So there will be a lot of tactics and strategies within this session that are all about, application, right? Not just learning. Those of you that are brand new, you're going to learn a lot here, but you'll also learn the application as well. So let's not do what everybody else does. These are the 6 most common challenges that companies face. Now, when I say these are the 6 most common, and where am I getting all this information from? I've been in the market 30 years. My firm, myself, we've worked with over, 10,000 companies, if not more. The companies that use all these tactics and strategies, right? Over $13 billion in government contracts. It doesn't even include the IDIQs, right? So we've worked with a lot of folks, and we know what works and we know what doesn't. These are the 6 most common challenges that we hear. Who buys what I sell, and how do I contact them? Bidding on information without any market intelligence. If all you're doing is going into the system for award management or into DLA's internet bid board system, for you, those of you that sell products, supplies, commodities, that's DIBS, DIBBS. If that's all you're doing, you're not going to win a lot. You're not going to win a lot of work, because that's mostly acquisition phase. We'll talk that also in a minute. Bidding without knowing the prospect. Yes, the government doesn't pick up the phone as much as we would like. In the commercial space, getting a sale, winning money, can take anywhere from 7 to 10 touches. In the federal market, it can take upwards of 20. Most small business government contractors stop calling after 3 or 4 calls or emails. Set the expectation right now. There is a ton of elbow grease. Don't give up. Be persistent. Keep calling. Leave more, don't always leave voicemails, right? You don't want to become the stalker. But it does take more elbow grease in this market. And if you are not talking to your prospects, you don't have market intelligence. You have no way to differentiate from the competition. Your proposals, it's going to be hard for you to be more competitive than the other companies. So you've got to know the prospect. And those of you that go, well, how do I know which prospects I'm going to show you that today. It's called propensity, right? Who buys what you sell, how much, how often. That propensity is what identifies your 3 strategic targets, right? Like 3 agencies. And we'll talk about that here as well. Bidding without knowing the competition. You know who you're competing against. How do you figure it out? The propensity, right? You can look up who your competitors are, which companies that are your size, maybe your socioeconomic status, maybe hub zone, within your NAICS code or PSC product, service code, last 3 years that have won contracts over $500,000. By which agency, which contracting office, how many companies actually submitted proposals on each of their contracts they won, what was the contract value. It goes on and on. There's hundreds of fields of that kind of data that if you're not accessing it, not only does it help you with figuring out, and I'm going to show it to you. Not only does it help you identify who your competitors are, it also helps you identify who your teaming partners need to be, or the prime contractors you should engage. Okay. All of what I'm talking about is doing the upfront work, right? Who are your 3 strategic targets? Who should you be talking to? What events should you be attending? What other companies should be in your teaming stable? All of this, these very common challenges, if you just see the forest through the trees, it'll be a lot easier, okay? And my job today is to help you see the forest through the trees, in addition to giving you a whole bunch of other resources that you can take a look at. Finally, not tailoring your marketing collateral. I'll be talking about that later. But at a very high level, stop carrying around generic capability statements, okay? That doesn't make smart business sense. Yes, the government tells you, you need to have copies of your capability statement when you go to meetings. That makes sense from a government perspective. That's not smart business, right? So before I go to the next slide, let me go down the rabbit hole. Yes, government is different than commercial, okay? Yes, government small businesses have to do some things a little different than larger businesses. But if you're going to be successful in government sales, You have to bridge government sales strategy with overall corporate business strategy. Okay. There's a lot of, not a lot, but there's a good amount of recommendations that, small business specialists, paid consultants, it runs the whole market. And they'll tell you, well, you got to do this, right? You need to go talk to the small business office. Well, that's great. What do you say? What questions do you ask? What's your objectives, right? You got to take capability statement to every meeting. Yeah, but what if I find out after the meeting, during the meeting, that what they're focused on is like not even listed on my CAPE statement, or it's at the bottom? I don't want them to have that CAPE statement. I need to tailor it after the meeting. We'll talk about all these little things. Bottom line, and then I'll move on. Don't just listen to what people are telling you to do to win government contracts. Trust your gut. Think like a business professional, not a government salesperson. Okay? Really, really important. Okay. Most companies that are first entering the space, or even companies that have been in for 5 or more years, they focus on unqualified opportunities, right? So from a business development perspective, you've got your 3 strategic targets, right? You need to know, you have intelligence on it, right? You need to understand their needs, where you align. I keep talking propensity. I'm really beating this horse, because you need to learn to do it. If you don't, you're either not going to have an accurate and viable business development strategy, or you're going to start paying consultants thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay. Now, there's some PTACs out there, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. Some of them are very qualified to do this. Some are, some aren't. Microcosm society. Always start with your PTAC. But shotgun sales, just, oh, there's an RFP. Oh, there's an RFQ. Let's bid on it. That's really successful. The typical company, okay, focuses 80% of their time is after the RFP is released, or RFQ. They spend about 5% of their time positioning with their prospects, introducing yourself, having meetings, phone calls, what have you. About 10% teaming, right? Because teaming is so critically important in the federal space. And then about 5% source of SOT. Source of SOTs are critical, folks. That's pre-acquisition. I'll talk more of that here. The majority of you probably on this seminar, this webinar today, are probably in that upper quadrant. You're, 80% of our time is looking for opportunities and bidding on them. I mean, what else are we supposed to be doing? Where you should be is 80% of your time positioning with your strategic targets, with your prospects. That means 80% of the time, not behind your computer. 80% of the time, not looking through opportunities in the system for award management. 80% of the time, you are pre-acquisition, okay? Now, I think from a business perspective, most of us understand what I'm talking about, right? You want to be engaging for opportunities before the RFP is ever released, right? They're either still in their acquisition, discussions, but it hasn't hit any of the public systems. And most people go, Josh, okay, from an educational perspective, I get it, right? From a business perspective, I get it. But Josh, how the HELL, how the heck do I get into pre-acquisition? I'm going to show you that, okay? And I'm going to show you some of the tactics and strategies. So bottom line, this slide, we need to realign and reset our expectations. If you want to be consistently successful in winning government contracts, you have got to get out of the acquisition phase, the focus, okay? You got to move into pre-acquisition. Now, what does that look like? Pre-acquisition and acquisition. The government, and if you didn't know the difference between RFP and RFQ, it starts with that concept, right? And they may have a sources sought, they may have an RFI, right? Remember, sources sought is a small business marketing tool to identify, are there small businesses that can, in fact, do this work and have the past performance? RFIs, that's not specific to small business. That's for large companies as well. Let me go down the rabbit hole. Sources sought. Last couple of years, the government took $20 billion worth of acquisitions away from small business and opened it full and open so large companies could compete. Why? Because small businesses haven't been responding to sources sought. Sources sought, number one, is a pre-acquisition tool. Sources sought allow you to influence the acquisition. I'm going to keep going down the rabbit hole because this is crazy important. When you see a sources sought and you go, oh, this was due 3 weeks ago. Man, I wish I'd responded. You can still respond. Sources soughts are not like RFPs or RFQs from a federal acquisition regulation, from a FAR perspective. Call the contracting officer. You go, hey, the window for the sources sought is closed, but I still want to respond. Have you moved into acquisition yet? And the contracting officer will 99% of the time go, no, we haven't moved yet. Yeah, go ahead, submit a response. Oh my God, that's awesome, right? The other thing on sources sought, if you're not getting the picture, you need to be responding to sources sought, right? We don't want $20 billion going to large business because they don't get 2 or more responses. When you are responding, if you don't want to answer a question, don't answer it. Don't answer it. If you think it's going to put you in a negative light, don't answer it. In a proposal, you have to be responsive, right? You can be thrown out for being non-responsive. You didn't answer all the questions. When it comes to a sources sought, there is no such thing as being non-responsive. So if you don't want to answer something, don't answer it. You're not winning anything. You are just trying to influence the acquisition. And the final point on sources sought, there's more pieces, but the really important one I want you guys to know is that don't just answer the questions. Always ghost. Put in 3 to 5 recommendations. Based on our past performance and based on our expertise of working with all these organizations, we've learned that one of the most common challenges is, ABC. Well, guess what? And then you say, we recommend that you put somewhere in the statement of work of the RFP or RFQ that you talk to this point in your response, in your proposal. If only one of those 3, 4, 5 ghosted recommendations makes it into the statement of work, you have competitive advantage because now you get to talk about your past performance and how it exactly aligns with what the government's asking for. Okay, so sources sought. I went down the rabbit hole, right? It's not, none of this is on the slide, but crazy important. Don't look at a sources sought and go, other companies will respond. I'll get back. When it comes out, I'll submit a proposal. Do not think that way. I don't care if you have a one page generic response that you quickly tailor to the opportunity in 5 minutes and submit it. Now, that's not the way to do business, but there's always exceptions. You need to look at doing that. Okay. So pre-acquisition, sources sought, RFIs, draft, pre-solicitations, having phone calls with the government, having meetings with the government. That is pre-acquisition. Everything else is acquisition, RFP, RFQ, etc. Now, if you don't yet fully believe me or trust the criticality of the acquisition versus pre-acquisition focus, this should open your eyes. Everybody says, hey, SAM's the gateway to, government sales, government contracts. At any one time, only 10% of of your viable, available opportunities for what you sell are in SAM. That's it. Now, a lot of folks go, what do you mean only 10%? Where's the rest of it? The rest of it is pre-acquisition. The rest of it hasn't moved into acquisition yet. So look at the pie chart. That 9 and 1, that 10%, that's SAM, right? 9%, it's in acquisition. 10%, that 1%, 10% of everything in SAM today is actually sources sought, right? Think about that for a minute. That's a crazy high number. That means the government is really focused on working with small. But if we're not responding to sources sought, it's our fault, right? That stuff isn't getting set aside. But then you have this other 90%. They know they need your solutions, but maybe they're in year 2 of a 5-year contract for what you do. It's not coming up for recompete for a while, but they're not going to post anything similar to it for years. They still need what you sell, but you're not talking to them. Maybe the incumbents needs help. Maybe I see it a lot. Maybe the incumbent needs some additional support. I have seen the government say to a prime contractor, a small, right, even a hub zone, and go, we're going to put another $1 million on your contract, but we want you to sub it to these guys. We're going to have these guys do something a little different from you, but we just don't want to put it out for competition. But we really like that happens. That happens. Okay. So they know they need your solutions, but you're not talking to them and it's not a priority for them anyway. Or maybe you have a niche, something really cool. They don't even realize they need what you do. Bottom line, SAM is only 10% of what's out there. Yet many of us focus on SAM, right? And I'm not saying we don't go into SAM and every morning you're pre-qualifying opportunities. Every afternoon you do a more deeper qualification, right? The next day you're starting to look at teaming, you're doing a compliance matrix, whatever it may be. 10%. Therefore, you're spending 80% of your time on only 10% of the opportunities, and you don't have any market intelligence for them. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but it is one of the most important things for small business to focus on. Get out of acquisition phase from a strategy perspective and get into pre-acquisition. Now, I'll touch on all that, and how you get into pre-acquisition, what you should be doing. But before we go into that, let's talk differentiation, right? Because it's not what you sell, it's the value that you provide. So I'm going to take a drink of coffee. There are 3 categories, right? These are mine, right? I believe there are 3 categories. You have your direct, your indirect, and something I call balancing. First of all, direct. Those are the easy ones. That's what we all think of, right? It's either the features of a product, right? It weighs this much, or it weighs less than the competition. It's your past performance, your current customers, who your partners are, your certifications, right? Easily qualifiable, quantifiable, and all small businesses can easily do this, right? Those are differentiators, sure. The indirect ones are more hard. It takes time, right? By the way, look at the second bullet on indirect. in terms of on the right side, the table. Agility, flexibility, innovation. You look at any Department of Defense vision, right? Like DOD, DOD 2030, right? The next 10 years, whatever it is. All the federal agencies. Actually, this brings up a really good point. DOD, all the federal agencies, they all have these outlooking statements about the direction they're going, their strategies, what they're looking for from industry. I swear 99% of us don't look at that stuff. That's awesome stuff. They're telling you the direction they're going. They may not say they specifically need what you do, but you may read between the lines and go, wait a minute. From a very strategic perspective, we need to be positioning this. We need to start talking to the larger integrators or larger general contractors or whatever industry you are, right? Larger primes. All those forward-looking, outlooking, whatever the right phrase is, they all talk about the criticality of small businesses being more agile, flexible, and innovative, okay? I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole one more time. Innovation. Innovation is, you have to be really, really careful when it comes to innovation, okay? Why? Because if the government's not looking for innovation and you're saying, well, we have this really innovative product, the government is the most risk-adverse organization on the planet, okay? If there's a proposal you're writing and the RFP, RFQ, the solicitation does not specifically say we're looking for innovative solutions, they have a solution today likely that they expect, right, in their own head, or they have an incumbent doing it. You coming along and saying we have this great innovative solution, product or service, you're going to scare the hell out of them. Source selection is probably going to go, no, we don't need the innovation, even though we know that's how we progress as a society. Recognize the risk of communicating innovation. So for all of you, all the companies, whether you sell product or service, do not get on innovation from a process perspective, methodology perspective, product perspective, service perspective, whatever perspective. Unless you know before you write the proposal that they are open to innovation, you are accepting major risk in putting innovation into your approach, okay? All right, so indirect, difficult to position, right? Balancing, okay. Big foot stomp. Everybody that was here all the way at the start of our session today heard me say a couple things about HubZone, right? In that, yes, it's a differentiator. Let me be very clear on a couple things. And I'm going to give you some examples to drive the point home. And I'll be happy if I just convince one of you, just one of you, to change how you approach your status. Number one, socioeconomic statuses are balancing differentiators for the following reason. There's an opportunity on SAM. It is a HubZone set aside. 13 companies respond to it, okay? And 13 go into source selection. What is the one only commonality between all 13 companies? That's right, they're all HubZone. At that point, your HubZone status means absolutely nothing. Your status provides absolutely zero value. So I tell people all the time, your socioeconomic statuses, be very careful. They're a balancing differentiator. Yes, there are set aside, the government is, statutorily, congressionally mandated to do 3%, right? HubZone set asides. It's just opening a door, folks. You still have to communicate your value. So I do not want to see at the top of your web page that you are, let me make sure I don't have this in here somewhere else. Yeah. I don't want to see at the top of your webpage the big HubZone certification logo, SBA HubZone certified. That should be on your government landing page. When I look at your capability statement, it better be at the bottom, okay? And in fact, I wouldn't even use the logo. I would just say HubZone certified, right? Your business card. How many of you have HubZone certification on the front of your card with your corporate logo on two different sides? And your HubZone logo is pretty much the same size on the card as your corporate logo. This goes for whether you're HubZone, whether you're 8A, woman-owned, veteran, service disabled, does not matter. Do you know what you're telling the government buyer? Do you know what you're telling your teaming partners? That you believe your status as a HubZone, or whatever status you are, is the value that your company provides. Think about that for a minute. Is that the value of your company, that you're in a HubZone? No. No, the value is the value that your products and services provide to your clients. So I do come at this from a different perspective. I do understand that, there's tons of the, whether it's, government funded nonprofit, state funded nonprofit, coaches, consultants, small business offices, everybody tells you, you got to use your status, it's got to be front and center. No, from a business perspective, you're telling the world that the value is that you're a HubZone company. Business perspective, that's ridiculous. Okay. So your status simply balances you in the market. So if you look at the CAPE statement on the right, you can see that the certification, it's below NAICS codes, small business and SDVOSB. You don't see an SDVOSB logo. Yes, I know the VA wants everybody to be proud. I'm a service disabled veteran-owned company, or I'm proud. I'm a HubZone. 35% of my employees are in the HubZone. My headquarters is in the HubZone. That's fine. I'm not saying you can't use logos, but I'm trying to show you there are different ways of positioning in the market. Because here's the deal: the fact that this company is small in SDVOSB, they're not going to win any contracts unless they can communicate value and have the tactics and strategies to execute a strong business development process. Now, many of you have probably been told you can't use logos in your CAPE statement. Here's the deal. From a legal perspective, from a regulation perspective, you are not supposed to use Department of Defense logos or federal agency logos without permission from a public affairs office, PAO. Large corporations follow that. Small companies do not. Okay. 99% of small businesses use logos. Why? Because nobody's going to read your capability statement. You have 6 seconds. You have 6 seconds. That's all you're going to get. So if you give it to me, 6 seconds. I'm going to look through your CAPE statement. What is one of the most important things that you can communicate to me is that you are a mature company. Even if you've just been around a year or two, you're a mature company and you've got past performance. Boom. As soon as I look at this, Corps of Engineers, Air Force, Homeland Security. Okay, well, they obviously have something. Prime, sub, not sure what it is yet, but they're clearly, they have some clients. My recommendation is to use logos, okay? Absolutely, positively use logos. The government doesn't want you to. It's government. From a business perspective, yes, you want to use them. The other part is everybody tells you to take your CAPE statements to meetings, right? Don't take your CAPE statement to meetings. If you have a meeting with the government, you take a business card. That's it. Folks, that's it. You don't bring marketing slicks and capability statements. I know this goes against 99% of what the market's telling you. But 99% of what you're handing out is getting thrown away. Don't kid yourself. It's going in the circular file, okay? Number two, all your generic marketing stuff is not positioning you for that specific prospect, right? You can have a generic one on your website. That's fine. Also, if a small business office, right, the director of small business for the National Science Foundation, Department of Education, whatever, right? Say, before I meet with you, you need to send me a copy of your CAPE statement. You're not going to say, well, we don't provide copies until after. Fine, send a generic. Speed dating, conferences, right, that we all attend. I call it speed dating. Matchmaking, that's what I call it, speed dating, right? Because it's speed dating, right? I don't take CAPE statements to those. And if somebody says to you, hey, do you have a copy of your CAPE statement? I do, but I'll send it to you digitally. I'm not going to make you take it home with you, right? So here's the example. You're a construction company, right? You're in the architecture, engineering, construction industry, AEC. You have a meeting with a government buyer. Let's say it's with the Corps of Engineers, right? At the upcoming Society of American Military Engineers Small Business Conference in Atlanta, right? This November. Let's say you have a matchmaking and it's with one of the buyers or small business professionals from the Corps of Engineers. You walk in and they go, hey, do you have a copy of your CAPE statement? No, I'll send it to you email. Here's my card though. And you start talking to them and you find out they are right now looking for a ton of small businesses that can do earthwork, right? Or that can do underground utility structures. When you get back from that speed dating event, matchmaking event, after the phone call, after your meeting, whatever, look on the right. I'm going to move earthwork and underground utilities and structures all the way to the top of my service list. And then in my capability statement section on the left, I'm going to rewrite a paragraph or two to talk all about earthwork and underground utilities. So that when they get my capability statement, they're like, oh, this is exactly what we're looking for. Folks, this has nothing to do with government. This is marketing. This is positioning. This is tailoring your message based on the market intelligence you're collecting from a meeting, okay? This is why I say you don't give out generics. Don't carry them around at conferences. You can carry a dozen if you want, just, because you just totally just don't agree with me on it, but there's always exceptions, right? Now, value. If you can't communicate your value, right? Your statuses are not value. The services, products you sell are not value. Your value is specifically quantifiable, qualifiable metrics and numbers and percentages, right? The value you've provided to other organizations, companies, etc. If you don't have that on your website or in your CAPE statement, this is what your marketing looks like. All of you, if you're not doing it. We're a great company, right? Hey, government has a 3% quota. You need to put us on your team or you need to buy from us. So I want you to think of your HubZone certification like Stephen Colbert and his thumbs up, okay? Because if you're not communicating value, this is the perception you're giving in the market, okay? So let's say I come up to you at a conference and I go, hey, Janet, nice to meet you. What do you do? I do not simply want you to say, well, this is what I sell, or that you're a small business, or that you're a, 8A or woman or veteran or HubZone, right? That's what we all do. Many of us do. It's not a lot of value there, right? Remember, it's not what you sell. I'm trying to rewire one brain at a time to make the small business community understand it's about pre-acquisition and it's about value, right? And it's not about what you sell. And it's definitely not that you're HubZone, right? It's the value. So those of you who still don't believe me on works, right? Or you're like, I get it, Josh, philosophically, I understand, but everybody I've ever talked to has said, do these things. You're one person. I've never heard you speak before, never read one of your books. I don't know who you are. I just know you're the speaker today. For those of you still on the fence, here's a real world scenario of how this works. I was working with this company, minority woman owned, right? And they coordinated a meeting with the most senior contracting officer at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Excuse me. And she said to me, how do I approach this? And I said, well, first, I want to know how you got the meeting. She goes, well, one contracting officer to another, had a friend, a colleague, and it took me about 3 months, but I finally got it coordinated. I was like, that's awesome. Great job. And I said, well, number one, don't tell them, don't start with, hi, we're a 8A woman-owned small business that, provides these services. All you're doing is telling me that you think that I should buy from you simply because you're 8A and woman-owned, right? So I told her, we walked through it for about, 20 minutes. She walked in and she sat down in front of the senior contracting officer, and about 30 minutes into the meeting, he goes, all right, so sounds like you know your stuff, right? Now, you weren't really clear up front. You're small, obviously, you're small business, right? She goes, yep. He goes, do you have any other statuses? She goes, well, we're 8A tribal and woman owned. And he leaned forward in his chair. And he was like looking at her like, don't you know how this works? And he goes, don't you know? Why didn't you tell me that to start with? Right? We've got a 5% requirement for 8A. We've got a 5% requirement, in terms set aside for woman owned. That's really important stuff. And she looked at him and she said, that's not who we are. That's not the value that we provide. And he just looked at her and he sat back in his chair. This is a true story. And he said, I think that's one of the best responses I have ever heard. And he took her by the hand back into the office, the inner offices, introduced her to 3 contracting officers, and she had 2 contracts within 90 days. Why? Because she didn't act like a small business. She knew that her statuses only balanced her out. She knew that the value of her company is the value she provides. And she got 2 contracts as a result. This is not a one-time thing, okay? So this is what happens when you focus on value. So I'm trying to rewire some of your brains to think more like business professionals than simply government salespeople, okay? Now, see how I'm doing on time? Doing pretty good. I'm going to race through some of this. I told you at the start, who buys what you sell, how much, how often? What is this called? Remember, what's the word? Propensity, right? Propensity. Who, how much, how often? One way to look at propensity is whether agencies are hitting their targets. In 2020, you can see HubZone, right? Only 54% of the tracked agencies and Department of Defense hit their HubZone requirements. Now, when you look at this, HubZone, right, up on the left side here, only 50% hit. Some people would go, well, we're in Q4, and you find the current numbers, which is in SAM's data bank. For those of you that don't know, SAM has a lot more than just finding opportunities, has all the historical data. And some people go, well, those organizations that have not yet, that don't hit their numbers for HubZone, those are the ones I need to target. And I would tell you, it is completely backwards. It'll surprise you The agencies that and the commands that are hitting their hub zone 3% targets, there is a focus to hit those numbers. Those organizations, agencies, commands that are not, it is for one reason only. I know the government sometimes gets mad at me for saying it, but they admit that it's true. If the director of an agency just, if hitting all the percentages is just not a priority, there's only so much the small business director for that agency can do, okay? So if you're hub zone certified, you're focused, at least you're looking at the green, not the red, because you know they're proven to do it. Now, that's just part of it. But the majority, I'm going to fly through that. The majority of propensity is through one of two systems, usaspending.gov or the data bank within the System for Award Management, or SAM, right? Now, usaspending.gov versus SAM, what's the difference? The primary difference in terms of usability and data for me and for you is that usaspending.gov also has subcontract data. So if you're a subcontractor on a contract, there is, let me hold on and close my door. Sorry, someone else in the office was on the phone. SAM doesn't have subcontract data. usaspending.gov pulls that data. So I almost always use usaspending.gov to at least look at it from a sub perspective. But usaspending.gov pulls most of its data from SAM, okay, SAM's data bank. But SAM's data bank has a third more data, okay? USA Spend is a lot easier to use, but SAM's data bank, the ad hoc functionality, you must learn how to use, okay? At the end, if there's any questions on that, I'll show you a resource where you can help teach you how to do it. But I want you to imagine whatever company you are. I'm going to show you the example. There was this construction company. They wanted 3 years of contract data. They operated under 13 NAICS codes. And I found 90,000 contract actions, historical contract actions within SAM. And they said, Josh, we're thinking of growing, maybe opening an office in Missouri or Tennessee or Kansas. Definitely not Texas. We just don't want to go to Texas. Should we be focused environmental, construction? Where's the biggest bang for the buck for us? And so, first, this is USA Spend, right? This is what USA Spend looks like. Gives you a lot of good info, folks. But where you need to learn, and this, there's an entire hour and a half webinar that I give on this. If there's enough desire for me to teach this, all of you throw emails to Michelle and say, hey, we want to see Josh give the data bank presentation. But at a high level, after you sign into SAM, you go to data bank. Some of you probably have seen it, but never realized what it was. You go to ad hoc and you click award IDV. And you have to create the first one, right? Government doesn't make it for you. And you have to put like 100 fields into it. You have to find those 100 out of the 300, odd fields, 400 fields. And once you have all those fields in, you're able to search by an agency, by a contracting office, by a NAICS code. And so, you can get millions of fields of data. You have to know how to use pivot tables, right? It's not hard. You just need to have somebody show it to you that first time. In this example, see those highlighted yellow on the left? Those are contracting office ID codes. You may not think they're very important, but if you look at the opportunities in SAM, right? for sources sought, RFPs, RFQs, right? And there's a, there's an RFP number, right? There's an opportunity number. If you look at the first 6 digits, characters of that number on any opportunity in SAM, those first 6 is the contracting office. That is the city and the state that opportunity is coming out of. Right? Again, it's not just what you learn, it's the tactics and strategies of how you apply it. So if you see I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. If you see an opportunity in SAM and you go, ooh, I wonder if the Army has any more of these type of opportunities, because this is what we do, then when you're searching for opportunities, don't search by just NAICS code. Type those 6 characters into the keyword box, and you'll see all the opportunities. RFPs, RFQ, sources sought for that specific contracting office in that city, in that state, right? So there's all this information and value. This is one of 100 fields of awesome value. But I wanted to show you, hey, for this 541330 NAICS code, engineering services, it's not just who's buying what I sell. It's prioritized by the contracting offices through the entire U.S. Army. That's awesome stuff. By NAICS code, clearly engineering services is number 1, followed by, the building construction. You can see all this. You're able to break it down, say, hey, show me all the organizations in government, commands, agencies. It's still not enough for you to laser focus, but this is the start. The data is there for you to get more granular. You may be selling a product or service where the NAICS code is too large, right? You go 90% of my search results. Yes, it's my NAICS code, but it's not what I sell. Maybe you should be searching by product service codes versus NAICS codes because they're more granular. Look, you can, by agency, you're able to tell this is propensity, right? Hey, this is cool. If there's a recompete, you see an opportunity, you go, oh, this is a contract that's been around for 5 years. We want to bid on it. You can figure out how many companies actually bid on this the first time around. It's all in the data, right? What kind of contract? Firm fixed price, cost plus, right? Was it under simplified acquisition, negotiated? Look at the states. They didn't want to go to Texas. And I said, look, Texas, by far, number 1. They opened an office in Texas. It just took the data from a business perspective to run their sales strategy. Now, I'm going to jump into one final thing before we go into Q&A. We're doing good on time. So I've ran through quite a few things that deal with prospecting in the federal space. Now we're going to talk about the actual methods, what the activities you should be doing. I break up government prospecting into 3 categories: the weak methods, the strong methods, the core methods. These are weak. If all you're doing is looking in SAM or looking in DIBS or whatever system you use, and you're primarily acquisition, not focused pre-acquisition, you're not going to win a lot of stuff. And by the way, that same applies for bid matching systems, contract management systems. Those, like the PTACs have one, the GovWins, the GovTribes. Folks, there's 1,000 systems out there, right, that do this. If that's, and you may pay $2,000 to $12,000 a year for these systems. But if you don't have the rest of your business development strategy really, really solid, you're wasting your money on those systems. Hands down, without a doubt. I never recommend, let me go down the rabbit hole. I do not recommend that you pay maybe more than $1,000. There's some systems out there that are just better than Sam, but I do not recommend that you pay for these bid matching systems until you have put a really strong business development strategy in place. Okay. Crazy important, because you can't take advantage of any of those systems unless you're focused pre-acquisition. See, people don't tell you this stuff because they don't talk to you from a business perspective. They talk to you from a government perspective. Marketing and advertising, right? Marketing, along with social media, LinkedIn. 60-70% of government folks are on LinkedIn. If you're not using LinkedIn as a part of your business development and prospecting strategy, start using it, okay? Because it's really good. Now, there's tactics of what you say, how you connect, how you follow up, so you don't come across like, hey, do you have any contracts? Today is not the day for all those tactic strategies, but today is the day to say, don't be focusing on Facebook and Instagram and whatever other systems out there. LinkedIn's number one. When it comes to marketing, another rabbit hole. Marketing includes your business card, your capability statement, a government landing page on your website, and something called an introduction capability statement, the ICS used for teaming. We're not going to talk that today. So that's all you need for marketing, right? Don't be paying for billboards outside of military gates. Government directories. Most government directories that you would pay for, they are $400 to $2,000. I think Yellow Book used to be one of them. You're not going to get a lot of value from those because they don't have all the contracting officers, onesie, twosies you're actually going to be talking with. It's really hard to find the right people. Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA. FOIAs are awesome, folks. Couple lessons though. Number one, a Freedom of Information Act cannot get a competitor's proposal, but it can get the contract. Okay. And contracting officers put about 10% of the proposal copy paste into the contract because they don't want to have to rewrite the whole contract, right? So companies will FOIA contracts awarded. You won't get all the pricing stuff, they'll black it out. But you can also FOIA the original RFP from 5 years ago that nobody seems to be able to find. FOIA can take 3 to 5 months. So if the RFP just dropped, you're not going to be able to FOIA. You won't have enough time. If a source of sought came out, you may have enough time. Pre-solicitation, maybe. The most important thing I can tell you about FOIAs, don't ever FOIA under your own name, right? Your company. Because the government there's no appropriations for FOIA work. The contracting officer is going to go, oh, for heaven's sakes, I got to deal with a Freedom of Information Act request. Hey, program manager, is it okay? We need to do this, that. Well, let's say that 3 months later, you submit your proposal and they go, oh, this is the company that wasted my time 3 months ago, forcing me to do a FOIA request. Folks, it's human nature. Should the government act that way? No. Are they humans? Yes. That is why you always have somebody else submit it for you under another company name, okay? Don't ever submit your own FOIAs. And if you're doing it today, stop it because you're probably blackballing yourself. Don't do it. All right, strong. Definitely talk to your PTAX, your hub zone contracting council. I already talked about SAM, the data bank, and usaspending.gov. You need to be talking to small business offices, Office Small Business Programs. That's just DOD. The OSDBU, Office Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, OSDBU. I love how that comes off the tongue. OSDBU. That's your federal agencies. Now, a lot of people will say to me, Josh, what exactly am I supposed to do with the small business offices? Your number one objective is to get a capability briefing. Not with a small business office, but with one of the program folks. You communicate your value to them, to the small business office. And a lot of them will go, well, are you registered in SAM? Well, are you looking for opportunities? Because that's where we post. And you go, no, hey, listen, small business director, really appreciate it. Now we're on top of all that. We've got all that taken care of. I do understand from my research through the data bank in SAM that within your agency, there are 3 core elements: contracting offices. Contracting office, 3 offices within the Army that really focus on what we do. Can you help facilitate a capabilities briefing between us, my senior team or myself, and one of those offices? That's your number one objective. Okay. The small business offices, if you go, hi, what do I do? They're going to treat you like, everybody else. Look, I worked with two of our clients, 2 companies, one NSF, one Department of Education. They positioned, right, to get the capability briefing, and 2 contracts, one for $4 million, one for $2 million. That's a great objective. What do I do with a small business office? Facilitate, communicate my value, get them to help get a capability briefing with the program side, right? Trade shows, crazy important. If you are in technology, you should be, I'll come back to that. Trade shows, that's where you can meet a lot of folks. Yeah, I know COVID is a challenge, but guess what? There's no excuses. Sales doesn't stop because of COVID. Government doesn't stop, right? We have to shift some things up, but you definitely want to be attending trade shows once you are physically able to, okay? Forecasts, they're either a complete waste of oxygen and time, or they'll provide some value. I tell folks, every agency has a forecast. DoD has a forecast. Why? Because Congress forces them to. Some only get updated once a year, some a quarter, some twice a year. Look, once you look through them and you see whether or not there's anything there for your company, if you don't see anything, move on. Don't ever look at those forecasts again. All right. They're either going to provide value, you'll see it immediately, or it's not. Don't waste your time on it. Okay. Moving to core, professional network, LinkedIn. Speaking of which, professional network. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, I put out lots and lots of stuff about government market, changes taking place, strategies to sell. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Now, all these things, there are only 3 things guaranteed, and you will win contracts. Those 3, you must have a strong teaming strategy. You must have a focus on actually talking to the government, phone calls, meetings. Look, we have WebEx and GoToMeeting and Microsoft Teams. There is no excuse to not have video, right? No excuse. If you're not talking to the government, and remember what I said, it's going to take you 20 touches. Some will take less, some will take 1 or 2. But to actually get the sale, 20 touches. You have got to focus on getting a hold of people. And don't get discouraged if after 2 weeks you still haven't. Keep doing it. Eventually you will. You have got to be persistent because most of your competition is not. Okay. Number 3, 80% of your time is focused pre-acquisition. So you have these 3. All the other things feed into them. You're looking for opportunities in SAM, bid matching services you're using, looking at RFPs, RFQs. Those all feed into your 3 core prospecting methods. All the other pieces on the left. And notice everything flows into number 2, government meeting, having intelligence. All of you, print this out, right? When you get this slide, print it out, stick it on your wall to remind yourself, if I'm not doing these 3, I'm not winning. Because a lot of you are focused on stuff on the left and the right, the weak and the strong. If you don't bring all this together and you ensure you are really focused pre-acquisition, you're just not going to win a lot. Now, Q4, I'm going to move really fast on this. No, I'm not. Yeah, I will, because I already, here's the deal. When it comes to Q4, you have to position correctly in Q1, Q2, and Q3. There's no magic here, folks. Okay. You have to be in front of them. They have to know who you are. All these consultants out there that, and coaches and counselors that go, well, there are ways to position in Q4. Yeah, their tactics and strategies are accurate. But from a business perspective, deep down, if you want to win contracts in Q4, you've got to be doing the right things the rest of the year. Okay. What did we learn today? Common challenges, perceptions, right? Acquisition versus pre. Man, if I did that horse is like hamburger now, 80% pre-acquisition of your time. Differentiation, value, propensity. You need to know who buys what you sell. And then we went through the various prospecting methods, right? To show you what you really need to be doing. Now, before we go into Q&A, if you're a podcast groupie, Game Changers, it's already at 145,000 since I did this. We interview experts across the country, and it's primarily small business expertise. How do you sell? Everything from bonding on your company to getting more capital to marketing, anything you can imagine, GovCon. You can go listen to the Game Changers podcast. It's free. Okay. It's run by my business partner, Mike Lejeune. Those of you who don't know who I am, I've written a couple of books. If you've never read any of the books and you like how I approach the market, The Insider's Guide, the one on the left, hands down, today, the #1 best-selling book on Amazon. #1 across Amazon. I put, I don't know how many chapters, 350 pages, whatever, of tactics and strategies. How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you think about this? If you like how I approached this seminar, grab the book. Okay. Grab that book. Game Changers, there were about 30 of us experts. GovCon, there was about 6, 7 of us. And so get the book, Game Changers, listen to it. All of the templates, all of the tactics, strategies, etc., is within what we call the Federal Access Coaching and Training Platform. Okay. We've got over 1,000 companies that use all these resources, templates for sales. How do you, all the stuff I talked about today and hundreds more. If you go to www.federalaccess.com/hubzone, that's how you get in. There is a free account. And then there's also a $29 first month. It's normally $59, but anyway, everything here is free except for the book. It's $20. With that, I hope everybody learned something. Hopefully each of you got at least one thing that's really valuable. And if you have any questions, feel free to send it to contact@rsnfederal.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And with that, I am out of breath. I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle. And Michelle, do we have any questions?
Yes, we actually do have some questions in here. The first one was, how do you spend 80% of your time positioning with prospects in a COVID world?
It's a good question. Great question. You pick up the phone and you start dialing. It's got to be, you've got to use the phone. Obviously, the phone's the key one. You're going to focus on LinkedIn. You're going to focus on email. It'll be everything but face-to-face. And if you say to me, I just haven't been successful unless I'm face-to-face, then my feedback would be, you have a challenge communicating your value then. The reason why people will not pick up the phone or will not return your call, the reason why they will not return your email, it's not because they're too busy or they are getting too many calls from industry, which they are, it's because you haven't communicated enough value for them to go, oh, I want to talk to them. Good question.
And to follow on with that, just to give you guys some feedback, I agree. I'm one of those people that I do better in person, but virtual matchmaking has become pretty prevalent. I couldn't literally yesterday after we did matchmaking, I think that we probably had about 20 or 25 different new buyers that participated. Now, usually when we have live conferences and things like that, you get a lot of the Ostaboos. And we're starting to actually slowly, because it's going virtual, getting contract specialists and getting contracting officers. Ironically enough, DOT is going to come out and they're going to bring, I just got the email yesterday about 10 different contracts people, so not like SBLOs. So that is one benefit that has kind of come out of this, is that slowly but surely some of these contracts and programs people are starting to realize that, hey, maybe they need to get involved, and it's providing new opportunities to connect directly with them. I'm not saying it always happens. Sometimes you get, we all know who you get. Like, here, go to our website. This is what we do. It's like, thank you. I couldn't just click on a link, but check out the titles too. So for those of you that are participating in the virtual summit on the 16th, I'll be updating the new profiles, but look into the buyer profiles, because on the 16th, you'll start being able to request those appointments. But again, just wanted to highlight on that. It's not all bad. The next question that we have is someone wanted you to elaborate on the comment that you were making about referencing, socioeconomic statuses and logos on capability statements and in the website.
Yeah, I saw that note, Michelle. You absolutely list it. You are going anywhere and everywhere. You're going to list your DUNS number, your cage code, or your SAM unique ID, whenever it takes over for DUNS. Wherever you have all that, you're always going to list your socioeconomic statuses and your certifications, right? Just remember, we do it softly. It's never at the top, it's at the bottom. If you want to use the logo, use the logo. Don't care, right? If you don't use a logo, you're clearly doing it much more softly, right? If I looked at your CAPE statement and I saw 3-4 logos for past performance, and I saw a HUBZone sorted logo at the bottom, probably tells me quite a bit right there. So I'm not saying never use that stuff. The one time that you don't bring it up at all until the end is when you're verbally talking to people, right? When you are talking to a buyer, a teaming partner. You don't introduce yourself, hey, we're in the business of providing the following value. And it ends up, I'm an IT company. Everybody's going to ask at some point, because it's so ingrained in our heads. Well, are you just small? Do you have any other status? It's always going to come out. What I'm saying is, be a mature small business, recognize from a business perspective that verbally, that's not you don't bring it up, but it'll always come out in conversation. Just don't start with it.
And I think that I started noticing, I think I would know why people start with it, is because when you write up your CAPE statement, when you're describing it, when you write your elevator pitch, when it goes in writing on your website, you put it there just because that's how it flows easily. So, and I think that people just get that ingrained in their head, and they kind of just regurgitate that.
No, that's a good point. And speaking, let me take that to another level. What you're talking about, that shouldn't be the case. If I see your corporate overview on your CAPE statement, it better not talk about you being small or 8A or woman or veteran or SWSP or HUBZone. You should just include that as a part of your certifications at the bottom. Because look, every CAPE statement goes, we're a HUBZone certified, our company is a HUBZone certified IT firm or general contractor or whatever. You are immediately saying to me, the value that my company provides is that we're HUBZone. Don't do that, right? The government tells you to do that stuff, but it doesn't make smart business sense.
They tell you to do it, but then they mock you behind your back for doing it.
I'm going to write that quote down. That's an excellent quote. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. All right, moving on.
Well, since you guys aren't going to ask questions, I'm going to ask a question. So, so what are the thought process, like now with everything that's going on with CMMC and the different certifications that are going, do you think that that's something that should go at the forefront, especially if they're like kind of maybe pre-vetted or a certain level? And I know with facility clearances, technically you're not allowed to post that you have a facility clearance on a public site, but because of it, it's a violation of the NISPOM. But with the Intel and DoD, like honestly, 90% of the time, you're not going to be able to do anything with them if you don't have that anyways.
So well, to the point on, you touched on a couple things there. For facility clearances, yeah, they'll come back and yell at you if it's on your website. But we tell most of our clients to go ahead and put it in their capability statements. Look, a facility clearance is just so crazy powerful to not market it. There's a balance between security of the nation and commercially useful, whatever information, and convincing other companies and prospects within the government to actually team or buy from you. So I am, that's one of those little lines I'm willing to cross a little bit. And then if somebody says something, then fine, take it off. But facility clearance, you should, once you have it, the amount of time and money it took for you to get it, hell yeah, you're marketing it, right? Again, from a business perspective, I'm going to disagree with some folks on that.
Well, you can do it in your capability statements, and you can do it like they technically, like on open source, do they check your websites and stuff? We had to ding SDVOSB because they were putting it in the public reporting when you filled it out. So like, even with the member network that we have going for the virtual summit, I put in there with facility clearance because technically it's behind that wall and it's not public. So
I put facility clearance up there with the use of federal agency logos on a CAPE statement. For me, it's all the same. It's, there's a line you got to sort of try to walk, but you don't want to do exactly what the government says. Otherwise, it's inhibiting your own marketing and position. So anyway.
Okay. Somebody asked where and how can I register for your training ad hoc, like in general? Can you explain to them where your other training sessions?
So the how to use the system for award management's ad hoc functionality.
No, are they talking? I'm not sure. Are you talking about his training that he hosts, like Mr. Frank? Or are you talking about like Sam, like the system for award management? Momo, can you clarify?
I think he's talking mine.
I thought he was talking yours too. Oh, he is talking about Sam, the system for award management.
So are we talking training on the data bank or just how to use the system overall?
Ad hoc, how to use the system.
Ad hoc. All right. So two different things. The reality is within federal access, right? The federal access coaching training platform, that's the one on the right side there. That has all those training videos that I've done. Okay. Now, those ad hoc, the really advanced, it's not free. You're going to have to pay $29 to get into it. Or you wait for Michelle to schedule me for a webinar sometime later in 2021, and I'll just do it for the whole HubZone community. But until that gets coordinated, that's part of the members area. So, get a free account, poke around. If you want that training, then just pay $29 and you'll get it.
Yeah, I would recommend you guys looking at the training portal. Mr. Frank actually reached out to me and he gave me access and he goes, "Hey, do you think this is something your members would want?" And I got in there and I was like, it's something I want. So I'm actually pretty excited because Momo, I'm glad that you came out with saying, "Hey, I want some extra SAM training," because I'm sorry, these new systems, like the conversion is about as clear as mud. So even I was talking to my peeps at SBA the other day, and I was like, so I'd really like to coordinate a SAM training. Selfishly, it's just because I'm really frustrated with it. And I haven't had enough time because we got so used to all the other systems. And it was just like, you know, the back of our hand, and we got to sit down and really think about it. And I have about 4 seconds per day to, you know, have free time to play around with stuff. So I have a feeling that I'm going to be going on this after I happily paid $29 to streamline some of the because I've been very frustrated with Sam lately. And I will hurry up. I'm definitely going to have him back. This was one of the presentations that I really wanted to participate in.
Well, thank you.
So, well, yeah, you know, I've heard amazing things about you. So I'm going to take advantage of it. You guys aren't asking questions, but I still have him stuck here for another 30 minutes. So, you know,
another 30 minutes.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember what time we gave us.
Are you kidding? We're already over now.
We are? Oh, crap. I didn't remember that.
So here's the deal.
Okay.
I'll stick for if we get more questions, I'll stick around for another 5 or 10. But then if somebody's got something else, just send an email to me at contact@rsam, right? And I'll do my best. But it's several of you have talked about the passion. I'm known for my passion. That's what makes me who I am. And by the way, I am giving another session on the 17th of September, Michelle. Mm-hmm. I'm giving another webinar. And what's that topic?
That topic, let me just bring it up. The methods for communicating your past performance.
Oh my God.
Government sales.
Okay, folks, all that value I was talking about today, that's on the 17th. If you thought this session was uber cool, you know, like the filling in an Oreo, right? Oh, warm and fuzzy. If you like that, my wife is laughing at me outside right now. If you like that one, the how to communicate your past performance and map your value, quantifiable, qualifiable numbers, metrics, percentages. I'm so glad I remember this, Michelle. Should have mentioned it earlier on. I cannot overemphasize. Attend the 17th because that one is probably one of my best sessions of all the sessions I give.
Well, Christine agrees. She said it's a double stuff.
A double. I see it. A double Oreo stuffing.
We do individuals. Okay. All right. So he agreed. Veronica says, you go find awards because agencies have to spend their money or risk not receiving the funds. They ask for the next fiscal year. What are your thoughts on prospecting end of the year for sole source direct awards?
Well, if you're 8A, pretty darn, again, they have to know who you are and they have to know your value, right? We've got lots of 8As that have already won sole source this year, right? Not because they're 8A, not because they're minority, but they did all the right things. They reached out. All the organizations, agencies they've been talking to all year, they got back in front of the contracting officers, all of them said, hey, don't forget us. You got something? I don't care if it's micro purchase on credit card. I don't care if it's under simplified acquisition of 250,000. I don't care if it's that 4 million. All right, 4.5 million threshold. We're here. We can do it. If you do that enough and you stay in front of them without stalking them, yeah, absolutely. Now, there's some woman-owned small business who go, well, we can get sole source too. No, Congress totally screwed that up. Okay, and it's been years now. It's been, what, Michelle, 4 or 5 years since that screw up. They will say that woman-owned small business, just like 8A, can have sole source. No, because they still have the rule of 2 for competition. So it's messed up. So
we're working on it though. We are.
Yeah, I know.
We're working on it, but we're not there.
Now, the only true sole source is 8A right now. That's it, right? So.
Well, they can do it, and I've actually helped a couple companies get their sole source, but it's the J&A. You're basically telling a contracting officer that they have to work a lot harder. If you truly are, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you brought up a really good point, and that is, for all of you that are 8A, I don't know what percentage, I assume you're all hub zone. Some of you are going to be 8A as well. Some that watch this on demand will be 8A. You do not have the contracting officer write up the J&A and the 4 parts of that justification. You do it for them. Okay. So if you see an opportunity and they go, yeah, we need this, it's going to be $2 million, about $2 million contract. We're not sure, there's 45 days left in the last quarter. You know what? You're right. You send them the justification and go, hey, if you could sole source it does right now. Here's our past performance, right? Here's the value we provide. Here's what we've done for other folks, blah, blah, blah. And oh, by the way, here's your J&A. I took care of it for you. Feel free to update it, edit it, whatever. Contracting officer is going to look at that and go, you know what? All right, they just made it really easy for me. So again, as Michelle and I are talking about right now, Michelle and I talk this stuff all the time. You guys just don't hear us talking it. These are the tactics and the strategies, right? It's not about what you learn, it's how you apply it.
Yeah, and you don't even have to title it like a J&A. You can just say, hey, I know that you would have to, adhere to these 4 things, write it up. It's almost like a white paper because they cannot tell you to write the J&A for them, nor will they. So, but just know that that's a better approach. And then the last question, and then I promise I will let you go. He asked that, can you elaborate on the capability brief with the PM? I usually get the same turnaround of make sure you're registered in SAM, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
So we're actually going to do 2 questions. I'm going to also answer Lee Ratliff's question about past performance on private versus government, private sector. But for the PM, when you walk in to talk to that PM, you should have a 45-second pitch. That 45-second pitch is the value you provide, followed by your past performance, because they don't know who you are, followed by what differentiates you, and then you taking control. If you're going to have a presentation, no more than 2 or 3 slides, maybe 4. Your primary objective when you are talking to a government buyer, decision maker, program manager, yes, it's a prospect meeting, but your objective is not to sell anything. Do not walk in thinking you're going to sell something. You have 3 objectives. Your 3 objectives are to build rapport, communicate that you're a subject matter expert, and collect intelligence, market information. So when you're talking to that program manager, you're going to do 45 seconds of this is who we are, the value we provide, the proof, our past performance. This is what differentiates us. And then you take control and you go, what I'd like to do is these 2-3 slides, then get out of slides and just talk to you. And then as you're talking, you just start asking questions. How much? You are not talking about your company. You're not talking about all the features and the benefits. Your job is to identify intelligence, information that allows you to then follow up with that program manager, that allows you to have information that'll make you more competitive when you write a proposal. It's all tactics and strategies, right? This is what we do. So anyway, hopefully that answers. The one question, the last one I was going to answer, private versus government past performance. Yeah, there's some DOD opportunities, contracts that say you have to have dealt with us in the past to go after this. But that's not the norm, okay? If all you have is private sector, commercial, past performance, do not think for a minute that it is any less valuable than government past performance. Don't let anybody tell you that, well, government past performance is more valuable, more powerful. It differentiates you more. It gives you better competitive advantage. Bullpucky, okay? Not the case in general. So you use your your commercial past performance, go after those government contracts. You're good. Now, what about those of you that don't have any past performance at all? What about those of you that don't have any commercial contracts? You don't have any state and local contracts, no federal. You started your company 8 months ago and you're trying to get your first one. Then your past performance is your individual past performance when you worked for a company before you started your own. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the way you need to think. And on that note, Michelle, I want to thank everybody. Nobody left. Everybody's still here from pretty much the beginning. Michelle, I want to thank you and the council for bringing me in. As always, it's always a blast working with you and your team.
I appreciate it. And thank you so much. And I can't wait for the 17th.
Woo! Looking forward to it. Until then, everybody, take care. Michelle, have a good one.
You too.